So you think that taking 20 years, that's a shame?
I don't know if it's a shame, but I know it's something.
Something happened there.
It's something. 20 years when we thinking of it, and again, for me, it's a history that I can read on Wikipedia. I wasn't there, so I don't know. But you see that 61 is Eichmann Trial, and you understand how important it is. Then you see, and as I put it on the presentation, next slide, we're moving to the 80s. What happened in 20 years? We don't know. We can ask.
Yeah.
But in 20 years, you see the country, the way they understand the trauma, the way they understand the story, the way they understand maybe their responsibility. Maybe.
Well, I think sometimes it takes time because you got to look back and evaluate. And when you're in the woods, it's super hard to have that perspective. But I would also argue, and I'm not Israeli, but I do know the power of popular culture. And it was 78 or 79 when a film came out with Meryl Streep and James Woods, and it was called Holocaust. And for me, I was in, 7th, 8th grade, whatever. And I remember seeing that movie, and that film, and that was the first time I saw dramatize what I had learned maybe in Sunday school, looking at scary black and white pictures of piles of bodies. And who wants to even look at that?
Right.
And that was my first introduction. If we even had it in high school, maybe. And if we did have it, it came in April at the end of the year when you studied World War II. And who's really paying attention to anything in April anyway? So it was minor. And it was only as an adult where I really became educated, maybe some classes in college, courses in college, etc. There was a beautiful quote you referenced about standing for the 6 million. Could you talk about that? The lawyer that present the state, when he gave his speech in front of the court in Eichmann Trial, he started his speech with one of the most iconic sentence that been saying in this time in this context of the trial. He says, "I'm not standing here alone. With me standing 6 million categories," which means we reference the 6 million of the Jews who were murdered in the Holocaust, and I'm gonna stand in front of these evil men by behalf of them, and I will be the voice of them also with me and all the nation of Israel. And this is something powerful that helps us understand that we are a nation. We're doing this together. We passed this event together, and the way we address it, the way we educate each other about this is our responsibility. It's tied together. And it was broadcast by national television?
Yes,
was it covered in the press? Okay,
yes, and the radio. And if you were living in Israel that time, you can't deny it. It was all over the world.
And you just discovered a very personal connection to the trial. Can you share?
Right. So there is a famous picture of my great-grandfather my name is Rotem Gabay. My middle name is Ze'ev. My great-grandfather, his name was Ze'ev. He used to be the mayor of Be'er Sheva. And he moved to Israel in 1938 before World War II as a pioneer with his youth movement. And he was helping the creation of Israel as a soldier, as a worker, as an Israeli, as a new Israeli. And he went, like many other people, at that time he used to work for the city of Be'er Sheva. I wasn't the mayor yet, only 6 months after. But he was part of what's going on, and he went to the trial, and we found a picture of him, famous picture that we kept in the family of him sitting there and be a witness of what's going on. So this is an example, but I believe that in this case I'm not unique. Like I would like to think that most of the Israelis that lived at that time has sort of connection and went to the court or watching this or listen to this on the radio was part of it.
So what year did your grandfather come?
So he came to Israel in 1938 from Poland.
Why?
So they were Zionists. They came to Israel as Zionist idea with the Zionist youth movement, HaShomer HaTzair from Poland.
What does that mean?
HaShomer HaTzair is the young guard.
Okay.
The young leader, the young guard.
Did he come with his parents?
No. So the 30s in Europe was a really, really hard time. In Germany, we know that Hitler took over in 1933. So, and the war only started officially in September 1st, 1939. So at that time, he based his, leadership and start passing on racist and anti-Semitism rules through the population. So those things happening in many, many other places. And we know that my great-grandparents came from Poland, but Poland was a young country that just created after World War I. So it wasn't a strong, government to live in. And so he came. Most of the Jews belonged to a Zionist youth movement, and they made Aliyah to Israel in this idea of creating the new Jewish state. Also, my grandmother made Aliyah to Israel at the same time from Poland. They didn't know each other, but the same youth movement, and they met each other here. But it was hard to leave Europe because Israel was nothing, and was the British was the one who conquered the land and controlling the land, and it was in the middle of the desert. It's not like what it is today. And again, they came from Europe, educated, with money, with they have a really culture. Right. They had their own life, and it's like I will tell you now that the ground in the United States is shaking. Maybe you should thinking of moving. So it wasn't. I believe that any person that understands the things going on around him, but also, they were patriotic to the place that they were lived, that was their home.
Yeah, right now I'm working with a family, and this isn't the first time I've heard it. My grandmother, she was Dutch first. She was German first. Only then was she a Jew.
Yes.
And clearly a paradigm shift,
I believe, and this is maybe message for the young generation. Most of the answer of the question that we might wondering or thinking are in the history. So German first. If we're looking at World War I, not World War II, we're seeing that most of the Jews served in Germany army and fight for Germany.
Of course.
And it was really, really important war for Germany. So they saw themselves, few years later, they were in line or in a train on the way to their death. But a few years before that, there were soldiers proud in Germany, they vote. Some of the Jews might vote for Hitler because he came in
look, he's going to help. The economy is garbage. We're going to help out.
The economy was garbage. Sure. There was, after a war, a lot of refugees, a lot of poverty. So I assume that there is Jews who vote for Hitler because he presents something different. And we need to remember this, and the same is happening with the Russian Jews, the Jews that came from USSR. And it's natural. If you live in a place, if you're born in a place, you're patriotic to the place, to nationality, to your language, to the reference, to everything, to the culture, to everything around you. Is the identity. It defines you, who you are. And on one hand, and again, maybe American Jews, and I became more and more open to this idea of American Jews live between identities, some of them, and maybe the society sometimes asking for you to choose, but you don't need to choose because you still can love and be patriot and be Zionist and share your love to Israel. But on the other hand, you're completely American, pledge and allegiance to the flag. And that's your country, that's your language, that's your home. So living in between, again, for me, it's harder to understand because I'm an Israeli and I never grew up in different place, but I understand this and I respect it, and I understand how a lot of anti-Semitism that going on here in the United States since I moved here a year and a half ago, that sometimes reminds me stories that I heard of Europe that I learned in history lesson. Right. So people might say that the ground is shaking, that the words are on the wall. I don't know. You have this. Yeah. It's over there. It's written, and there is again people that might look at this different. There is again people that might worry more than other.
There's a wonderful poem by Leonard Cohen, and it speaks to how, normal.
You want to read this?
Yeah, Adolph Eichmann loved it. All there is to know about Adolph Eichmann by Leonard Cohen. Eyes, medium. Hair, medium. Weight, medium. Height, medium. Distinguishing features, none. Number of fingers, 10. Number of toes, 10. Intelligence, medium. What did you expect? Talons, oversize, incisors, green saliva, madness.
So I chose this poem to put on the presentation after we spoke about Adolph Eichmann Trial. And the question that I referenced to you, what did you expect? Because for the first time, and we spoke about this trial from many, many angles, but this is the war criminal. This is a Nazi criminal standing in front of the court. He is the Nazi animal. But he is a human being. And all those people who have done this to other people were human beings. And sometimes it's hard to acknowledge this, because means that we have this. There's a really famous book that written by David Grossman, one of the most famous authors in Israel, and it's about a kid named Momik. And Momik was really distressed by the fact that he can't find any silence because he's looking madly for the Nazi animal. He assumed that the Nazi animal is something that exists, and he's worried that the Nazi animal will come to him and get him. So just for us to understand that we're speaking, especially in Hebrew, this word, the Nazi animal, exists to describe that it can be human. This is easy for us to thought that human not acting like this. I made this presentation before it was the big Holocaust forum this week in Jerusalem. And again, I think this is something, if you're listening to us, please Google the speech of the president of Germany. And he said loud and clear about how he proud to be here today and respect the honor of the people, but in the same time he understand, and he said out loud the word German, who does this. It was human being. It was the German nation, the German law, the German people who support this, who was part of it, was their responsibility. And he says that the responsibility of Germany never expired. But those words, those powerful words from the leader, sometimes we're not to taking responsibility. One of the most weaknesses of the human being, right? Taking responsibility, standing behind.
Right,
Speaking up, but also taking responsibility. It was something, of course, that doesn't belong to him. It wasn't his fault. It wasn't his generation.
Right.
But again, to understand that, yes, people, one of the most educated nations in the world, the German, that brought us, many innovation that we know that we're living today, culture and education and literature,
drama,
like all those big names that were all German.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And this nation has this side and this side. So people say that human, in this book about Momik, the kid, he at the end is understand that Nazi animal is something that probably exists in ourselves, in a human being. And if we feed the animal, it will grow. And if we feed each other in hatred, in fear, in bad stuff, we will become different people. And if we feed ourselves with kindness, with helping each other, with respect, with tolerance, we will become something else. So